Okay, good morning colleagues, and can I welcome everyone here to the meeting for the Committee for the Economy, joined in the room by our Vice Chair Gary Middleton and Mr Honeyford, and online we have Sinead McLaughlin and Padraig de Larga. Do we have any apologies, Peter?
I don't.
No. Okay. Declarations of interest, members, do we have any? If none, we'll then move to Chairperson's business. Members content following our meeting from last week that I write to the Youth Assembly thanking them for their engagement last week. Yeah. It's agreed, thank you. Draft minutes, members, of the meeting for the 29th of May are there for approval. Are members content that they're a true and accurate reflection? Thank you. Matters arising, members, then, are you content that we write to Dr Hughes thanking her for her evidence and suggest that the committee writes to both the departments seeking side of the Ministerial Joint Departmental Working Programme, including timelines covering the all-age career service framework and the services available to SEN children? Are members content with that?
Is that agreed, members?
Yeah.
Thank you. The committee writes to the Speaker also then thanking him for allowing us to use the plenary chamber, and if there are no other matters, then members will move to the
so thank you for evidence and seeking information.
So we need to also then ask Dr Hughes for her report and seeking side of her recent publication comparing career support practices in the different jurisdictions. Members content with that? Okay, thank you. We'll then move to the committee agenda, which is starts with item 6, oral evidence from the department. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members will now receive a briefing from the department on the 24-25 budget and refer members to the clerk tabled note in our tabled items. This session will be covered by Hansard. If we look at page 30 of our packs and page 55, that's documents provided by the department, and I'm very happy to welcome representatives from the department here this morning. I'm very happy to hand over to you when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm joined by my colleagues Susan Butler and Niamh McGarvey to update members on the Department of the Economy's 24-25 budget. Since my last appearance before you just 2 weeks ago, the Department of Finance has commissioned June monitoring. Whilst the initial budget process is ongoing and a quality screening not yet complete, there are several allocations that have since been confirmed by Treasury, which necessitate the need for a monitoring round now rather than wait till later in the financial year. The Department submitted its return to DOF as requested on the 31st of May. The paper members have in front of them this morning sets out my Department's response to the June monitoring exercise. As members will be aware, the monitoring exercise, which typically occurs 3 times a year, allows the Executive to realign its budget allocations on the basis of emerging needs. The paper therefore details changes to the DFE 24-25 allocation due to anticipated funding from Treasury, bids to the Executive for additional funding and reduced requirements. I will briefly summarise the headline figures rounded to the nearest £1 million. It is anticipated that the DFE 24-25 non-ring-fenced resource DEL budget will increase by £31 million, from £767 million to £798 million, as a result of £15 million earmarked funding from Treasury to fund ongoing work related to the Protocol and Windsor Framework, £16 million from the Northern Ireland Office to support additional skills and entrepreneurship programmes and advance international expansion, all key aspects of the Minister's economic vision. A £0.2 million reduction due to income from minerals that cannot be retained and must therefore be returned to the Department of Finance as consolidated fund extra receipts, and a £0.1 million net reduction due to agreed budget transfers between departments. Turning to capital, it is anticipated that the DFE 24-25 capital DEL budget will increase by just under £1 million, from £222 million to £223 million, due to a £29 million bid to meet the initial shortfall in allocations for the Belfast Regional City Deal projects, a £2 million reduced requirement relating to Invest NI's earmarked complementary funding, a £500,000 allocation for Protocol and Windsor Framework capital, and a £27 million worth of transfers to other departments, mainly in respect of the public sector energy invest to save projects. As departments can reallocate their non-ring-fenced resource and capital budgets to meet emerging pressures without recourse to the Department of Finance, the paper also sets out changes to the internal budget allocation within the Department for the Economy due to internal reduced requirements, budget pressures and reallocation actioned as part of June monitoring. DFE has allocated 6.5 million of non-ring-fenced resource DEL against pressures of 5 million. This has resulted in a 1.5 million reduction to the opening overcommitment. However, 12.5 million is considered manageable within the overall departmental position. Moving on to capital, internal reduced requirements of 18 million were identified in June monitoring and offset against bids of 18 million, resulting in the overcommitment remaining at 12.8 million. Like resource, this is considered manageable within the overall departmental position. In addition to changes in non-ring-fenced resource DEL and capital DEL, the Department has submitted a bid for £35 million of ring-fenced resource DEL for depreciation and impairment to address the £34 million shortfall in the initial budget plus a further £1 million pressure. The Department has also submitted a £3 million reduced requirement for financial transactions capital due to Invest NI expenditure being lower than anticipated, coupled with higher receipts. That is a quick summary of June monitoring. Members will also have in front of them, as requested at our previous meeting, a comparison of last year's opening and closing positions against the 24-25 initial budget and June monitoring position. I've endeavoured to present what members have asked for in as clear and concise a way as possible. However, members will appreciate the complexities of public finances and the various aspects that make up our budgets, which necessitates the need for this to be presented through several tables. Members raised other queries at our last meeting, which we are currently collating a response to. In respect of this and June monitoring, Niamh, Susan and I will do our best to answer any questions members might have and provide additional clarification. Where we cannot give you a precise or complete answers on issues, we will be happy to write to the clerk to provide the necessary explanations. Where a question is specific to a business area, we will ask our policy colleagues to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Joanna. Joanna, I just wanted to check firstly from me then, so do we have then any figure that's currently unallocated within the department's budget?
Yes, the 11.8 million that I spoke about at the previous session remains unallocated, and the Minister's going to be considering proposals in respect of those allocations.
You know what proposals he's currently considering on those?
Well, obviously skills is very high up the agenda, so skills, he will be considering additional allocations for skills proposals.
Okay. And then just in relation to the 29 million shortfall within Belfast City Region City deal, is that for specific projects or is that just...
No, it's a timing difference within the Finance Minister's budget was based on the communication by the Secretary of State, I think on the 20th of March.
Yes.
So the shortfall from Treasury was to come in through June monitoring round, so it was basically just a timing issue.
Okay, no problem. And the only other one from me is 2.7 million for pension pressures and pay for Invest NI. Is that just again accounting, or where did that large pressure come from?
So, as part of the initial budget allocation, all ALBs were funded for their pay and price, with the exception of Invest, and that was because the Minister had requested additional information on what the impact would be, because obviously theirs is quite a large figure. So the impact assessment on that has come through, so the allocation was then made as part of the June monitoring exercise.
That's perfect. Padraig, if you're there.
So, Padraig, are you ready to ask your question?
That might not be able to hear. I suppose start in the room then, David.
Thank you, Joanna, for the tables that came through. It's really helpful. I'll look in more detail over the next while, but really appreciate when we're asked stuff, you've come back and delivered what we were looking. So thank you for that. Just a couple of things just around. I hope I'm not sure you best place or you can answer these, but it triggered my the investment zones, the enhancement investment zones. It was 150 million. The Dell's 343 or something like that, around about that. So it's quite significant in value of money. And it basically, is there not how those will function, how that works?
Obviously,
Yeah.
I think it's the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities are the lead on that, along with Treasury.
Okay.
So I don't have any updates
no,
in respect to that.
No bother. And I see you don't, all I was thinking was 150 million going in. What's the investment, or sorry, the return on that investment? Like, if you put 150, what is the department expecting back? You don't.
Again, that would be, I suppose, there will be the normal business case value for money assessment, and return on investment will be assessed probably through that.
No bother. And then the only other one I had, because I was City David was mine, but the chair's already covered that. But there's a line and it just says annual managed expenditure 557.1 million. So it's just one line thing. What exactly makes that?
So the majority of what would be our annually managed expenditure budget would actually be student loans. So that would be the physical cash payments out on student loans, which are managed through the AME budget. And then there would be technical things like provisions that would be, and RHI is the other. They would be the main categories under our AME budget.
Okay, cheers, that's me. Thank you.
Okay. Gary?
Thanks, Chair, and just thank yous for the information. It is much better, clearer and detailed, and as a committee no doubt will follow closely over the next financial year. But I suppose the specific just for me, obviously I'm interested in the 11.8 million, and we'll wait for the Minister to come back in that respect. The issue in terms of student support, I noticed just from the table in terms of the opening 2023 opening and obviously the current opening, I think there was a reduction of 4.3 million. Could you maybe just explain in terms of the reasoning for that?
Yes. So both maintenance grant levels and income thresholds against which students are means tested has been frozen since the 2010-11 academic year. So as household incomes have risen with inflation, a reduced number of students have become eligible to receive grants under those thresholds. Right, so that's resulted in a downward trend and obviously then an underspend in those areas. Now the Minister has requested officials examine options for him to consider in this area.
No, that's useful. Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's try. Padraig, are you there by any chance? Sorry, but it's the silence.
Yeah, just checking you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Just checking you can hear me okay there, yeah?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm having a couple of technical difficulties here this morning. So thank you firstly for your presentation. It's really just one question for me, and I suppose it's around the budget, just to check around the recommendations for the renewable heating incentive. So the report, the financial value attached to that, and the implementation, stuff like staff training, and just really to get confirmation around whether or not that's something the department's looking at as part of wider budgeting.
Thank you. Padraig, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to answer that. That would really be for my colleagues in Energy Division who would oversee the policy and implementation of that. I think maybe there was something related to that in one of the outstanding queries that we are to get back with, but perhaps if that's maybe included as a query, we can add that then to the correspondence we'll be sending back.
Yep, that's great. Thank you.
And David, you just wanted to...
Sorry, very quickly, just is there any set of figures? So whenever we're looking at the description of like Screen NI or NI Screen or Tourism NI or those sort of the bodies that are financed, is there any set of figures that gives what the return is on that? So people do studies into say, and Screen NI gives us whatever pounds return back. Did the department do that for any of these, or for? I know all of them. It's not a.
Yeah, it will be based on the individual business plan. And then obviously when there are specific business cases and things like that, that will look at that. But I think there was written briefing on this before, so there's varying approaches, obviously by the partner organisations and then obviously in the department, to measure how each of those partner organisations delivers on their, targets agreed by the department as part of that business planning process.
But what I'm saying is that, and then the wider piece. So if it's screen or NI screen, for example,
additionality and things like that.
It's what it brings to the wider. Is there any figures ever done officially that shows, like, for every pound? I'm just plucking a figure. I'm not.
Yeah.
For every pound spent, we get £2.50 return, or we get £5 whatever return.
There are, based on I think when we look at individual grant schemes and things like that. So again. And I suppose different programmes, so it would be individual probably to each specific project, but that would really be my analytic and economics colleagues that could probably answer something like that. And I do think there's a specific query in on screen as well.
That's one of them. There's a few, there's a few. Some of them it's not applicable at all, but there's some of the, if we're putting investment in, it's what that then's worth. Is it worth putting more in? Is what I'm getting at, rather than less. It's more, is it worth investing more? And
there are specific things like Invest NI. There, if my memory serves me right, there grant for R&D for every pound spent. I think that's a £5 investment because you have the match funding from.
Exactly, but is that level that is the funding? That calculations instead of each department, that isn't done overall from the department so it's standardised, if you like.
It wouldn't be standardised because the deliverables, from each of them would be very different. They would look at those each as an individual basis.
Well, thank you.
And then just finally, sorry for me, so just to go through the bids then that have been submitted for June monitoring round. So is there any that the Minister thinks will not be approved or have been told that are unlikely to be approved at this stage?
In respect of the Treasury funding, all of those have been already confirmed by the Department of Finance. In respect of the non-ring fence DEL for depreciation, yes, that is the same for all departments. All departments had a reduction in that as part of the initial budget. That will very much just depend on a timing. If Treasury have increased the NI block allocation for that, then I would anticipate we will at least get some of that now, or maybe or at least later on in the financial year.
And with the new mechanism then, in terms of budget and process, that there'll be sort of the monthly returns to DOF and trying to ensure that they stick to a budget across the executive. Is your understanding then there won't be an October monitoring round?
That hasn't been communicated to us presently, that there won't be an October monitoring round. We always do a monthly forecasting exercise.
If you've read the report by the Fiscal Council, they just say that the executive had taken the view that there wouldn't be an October monitoring round.
Sorry, do you want?
Go ahead.
It was indicated in the executive paper that there will be no October monitoring round, but the latest we have heard from DOF is there will be because of the transformation fund. That's when it'll likely be allocated. Okay. But probably more details will come.
I think it was anticipated it might be able to be done by June, but I think that will be, and obviously then, depending on Westminster and Treasury's timetable as well. Yeah,
and in terms of that allocation, do you think there'll be anything for the Department for the Economy in that in relation to public sector transformation?
It was only commissioned on Friday, so I haven't been party to any information in respect to that.
And just in terms of the surrender in that June, so 2.7 in terms of FTC, so devolved administrations across the UK aren't amazing at being able to fully utilise FTC. Are there any thoughts in terms of what the department might be able to do with FTC, given in the overall budget there's still quite a bit of unallocated FTC?
Yes. So Invest NI obviously would be our main user of financial transactions capital, and whilst the easement is 2.7 million, 1.7 of that related to obviously the demand-led element of their access to finance schemes, and the other £1 million is actually it's accelerated receipts, so they're getting repayments in quicker than what they anticipated. So it's just that 1.7 million, and again it's a demand-led scheme, so unfortunately that's just the nature of it.
And are you involved in the Catalyst application for FTC?
I'm not.
No. Okay. No, that's fine. And then Sinead? Can you hear me, Sinead? Yeah.
You can hear us. Do you have a question?
Yeah, that's
Can you
you.
hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Look, I've been in and out here, so I don't know if somebody else has already asked this question, but it's about the student support. It is looking that it's been reduced by 4.3 million. Can you kind of talk me through that? And if you have, I can go back and get the answer later. I'm sorry.
No, Sinead, I'm happy to reflect back on the answer because I do think, you know, it's an important area. So, maintenance grant level, so this is our maintenance grant element, and the income thresholds against which students are means tested has been frozen since the 2010-11 academic year. And as household incomes have obviously continued to rise with inflation, the number of students that are eligible to receive the grants under those thresholds has fallen and continues to fall as those income thresholds increase. And the Minister has requested that officials examine options for him to consider in this area. So it's the mean tested element of that has brought down that level of demand. Less people are eligible for it.
And can you talk me through just the allocations for higher level education as well?
For higher level education,
Yeah.
so the higher level education budget is obviously the grant that goes to the universities for teaching. And
Yeah.
then student support is paid directly to the students themselves. So that would be through the ring-fenced Ardell budget and through the AME budget. There would also be things in the non-ring-fenced budget for higher education for various other student support and the hardship grant that goes over to the universities as well. And there would be also stuff in, I think, increased participation that is also paid over to the universities.
So, and just looking at the FE colleges, the allocations appear to be down by 27 million when closing position is compared to opening position.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me as well?
And indeed, so in respect of the opening position, there is a significant reduction in the FE position. When you go to the closing position in respect of last year's closing position against this year's closing position, it's a £6 million reduction, and the reason for that is the savings from the voluntary exit scheme that have enabled then, so basically the 233 million allocation to our FE colleges this year, they have confirmed that that is sufficient for them to meet their ongoing costs, and that is because of savings that they have delivered previously and also the savings that they anticipate to get through the voluntary exit scheme. So you'll also see from the opening position last year to the closing position, there's actually quite a significant increase in the budget for FE. So their baseline budget has been increased substantially, and that is to do with historic pay and price.
Okay, and can you, thank you for that, and can you please provide more detail on the McGee allocations as well? And I apologise if this has already been asked by other members.
Sinead, I don't have any further information from the last time I was here. My HE colleagues are currently working with the university on the development of those proposals. The funding that we have allocated is in respect of marker bids, so they're currently under development to get more detail around that, which we can then provide to the committee.
Yeah, because I mean, it is, you know, we know the allocation, but we don't know what it's for, or just the detail in it, and that's really, really important when we're in the middle of this project of growing the student base. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem at all. It's just Philip, we just had a quick overview. Was there anything? I know you had another engagement just this morning, so but just in case you had anything you wanted to raise in relation to.
No, apologies.
No, listen, I know you had another engagement.
Caught in the hop.
So no, apologies. Don't worry. Okay, well, thank you for that. Might be some that the committee will discuss after, and we'll follow up in writing. But thank you very much for your representations, and that's very useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies for the caught in the hop, and apologies for my phone going off.
On your knees.
knees.
Okay, do you want to run through that one there, Peter, that you just highlighted to me?
So, Chair, just there's a question actually that Sinead asked about the FE colleges. If you look at page 14 of your tabled items, under the FE colleges, like maybe I've just misunderstood the numbers, but the closing position for 23-24 is 260.9 million. The opening position after June monitoring for the FE colleges is 234.7, so that the department's table shows a difference of 26 million. So I understood there was about, that's what I thought, 6 or 7 million around the FE redundancy package that had given them extra money. That's why the number's down, because staff have left. But that's more than that, that's 26 million. So perhaps I've simply misunderstood, but if the committee's content to write to the department and just seek clarity on that, if that's agreed. And also I think the committee had previously asked about Mr. Delargy's question about RHI and the training associated with. Asked them that previously, but I can just reaffirm that question. If members are content with those, if there's any others. Okay, and then there were some other things. Just is the committee, I quite like that table that they've provided. I think it's actually very clear. And what this is rather like is a thing I told you about last week called an estimates memorandum. So this is what they do in Westminster. The departments produce a little memorandum that goes along with the estimates document. So the estimates document is a big thick telephone book full of numbers, lots and lots of numbers, quite hard to understand. But what they do is they provide a little memorandum, some words with the numbers, but they also provide 3 years previous data and 3 years forward data where possible for key budget lines. And the key budget lines are the ones in the table that they've provided. So the arm's length bodies and all those different groups. So you could be able to track apprenticeships last 3 years. That looks like a really good number, that it's going the right way in terms of like more money's being spent. So that sounds good. So the suggestion would be, Chairperson, that the committee writes to the department and asks it to produce an estimates memorandum including that level of information, which is what you would get in Westminster. So if members are content with that.
Members content?
Yeah.
And then further and finally is that the department will undertake an internal spending review in the summer. They all do this, every summer they do this, and this then informs the budget position for 25-26. So what they do is they have a big chat, they have a big fight probably about what money everybody wants, and they do that internally, and then they share the results with the Department of Finance. The committee get asked to see that in September, October, and that would then clue you in for the 25-26 budget. So instead of the executive just producing a budget in January and you going, wow, you would then know that the department had various pressures. It would give you the opportunity to row in behind the department or indeed criticise them if you wanted to. But it would give you info. So if the committee's content to write to the department and seek a briefing on their internal spending review, which I understand they will do this summer, and would have that in the autumn. That's agreed, Chair.
Members content with that? Okay. Then move to item 7, members, which is insolvency and director disqualification, oral evidence from the Department for the Economy. I remind members that the committee will receive an oral and written briefing from the department relating to proposed legislation, and refer members to page 85 of the clerk's covering note and page 91, the briefing from the department, and page 253 for the annual report. And we'll welcome our colleagues. Richard, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Colleagues, just
We're a little ahead of time.
Now, on behalf of the committee, welcome Richard Mons, Director of Insolvency, and Mr. Jack Reid, Deputy Principal at Insolvency. Very happy to welcome you here this morning, gentlemen, and hand over to you to provide an oral briefing to the committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the committee to give us this opportunity to present our proposals for an Assembly Bill and Insolvency Amendment Bill. Before I start, maybe I'll give you just a brief overview of the work of the Insolvency Service Northern and just give us some context of what we do. The Insolvency Service is probably one of the bigger branches within the department. We have around about 110 staff would be our full-time complement. The majority of our staff would be involved in our official receiver operations. So whenever a winding up order is made by the courts or a bankruptcy order is made, the official receiver, his responsibility and his staff's responsibility is to investigate the circumstances leading to the bankruptcy or insolvency, just to identify if any wrongdoing is being perpetrated by the bankrupt or by the directors of the company, and decide if any enforcement action or further punishment is required. Also, they will be responsible for looking at assets and recovering assets to liquidate them for the benefit of any creditors in the bankruptcy or in the insolvency. So that would be the biggest side of our operations. Our other side of operations is our principal examiner, who would look after our directors' disqualification and bankruptcy restrictions, so that if misconduct has been identified in any of the insolvencies, we can take action to disqualify directors or extend the restrictions imposed on bankrupts further than the standard 1 year. We also have our central accounting unit, which is responsible for managing all the monies from all the insolvent estates in Northern Ireland. And also then we have our insolvency practitioner unit. The insolvency service, we have a regulator and oversight function for the profession in Northern Ireland. So we would look at the recognised professional bodies who would monitor and licence the insolvency practitioners. We're responsible for oversight of those organisations to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing the way they do it. And then finally, of course, we're responsible for legislation, insolvency legislation in Northern Ireland. The insolvency legislation has devolved in Northern Ireland, but we tend to replicate.
Our colleagues just online can't hear you. Wouldn't mind just picking up a slightly.
Yeah, sure.
Apologies, sorry.
No, there was when it comes to insolvency legislation, it has devolved in Northern Ireland, but we would tend to replicate what happens in England and Wales. England and Wales, its insolvency system is very well established and is recognised throughout the world as one of the best systems in the world. So we have always tended to replicate what happens there, but it's been our policy and practice to do that. Which really brings us on to really what we're here to present to you today is our proposals for an insolvency amendment bill. So we're really here to provide a briefing on as a policy consultation which needs to be carried out as a first step towards making an Assembly Act to amend insolvency and directors' disqualification legislation. Insolvency can have a very direct effect on people, on the public, whether as a business owners, creditors or employees. However, the legislation governing both it and directors' disqualification is specialist and technical in nature and is very much the domain of those working within the profession, including insolvency practitioners, lawyers, accountants and of course the judiciary. The procedures available to deal with corporate insolvency have developed over the years and have moved away from the punishment of those who fall insolvent and focus on restructuring and reorganisation of firms in financial difficulty so as to avoid liquidation where possible. However, in some cases, businesses cannot be rescued and then must be subject to early winding up through processes such as company voluntary arrangements, administrative receivership, and winding up by creditors with a court order. It is also possible for a company to enter a moratorium to give it a breathing space, free from creditor action so it can sort out its affairs and identify the best means of progression. Statutory remedies are also available for individual insolvency or individual voluntary arrangements, a debt relief order or bankruptcy. And again, in terms of personal bankruptcy, the focus is on rehabilitation and debt relief. The last major piece of legislation to amend the primary legislation dealing with insolvency in Northern Ireland was the Insolvency Amendment Act, Northern Ireland 2016. However, there were some measures included in the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act 2020 that made amendments to our legislation that were specifically aimed at helping businesses trade through the pandemic. As a result of changes to legislation at Westminster, there is a need to further amend our primary legislation and to amend the subordinate legislation governing partnership insolvency. The changes take the form of minor alterations to various aspects of insolvency and disqualification legislation aimed at refining or improving procedures for the benefit of those using or affected by them. There is no central or overarching theme to the amendments being proposed. There are a total of 27 amendments, 23 main ones and 4 minor ones. Full details of each amendment are included in the briefing provided to the committee, so I will not go through each one in detail, but will be pleased to answer any quick queries the committee may have on any of the proposals that we are making. However, I will highlight 6 of the more significant amendments. The bill includes provision to allow the meetings of creditors to take place in ways which do not involve a physical meeting, unless that a specified quota of creditors or contributors request one. This will benefit creditors by giving them the opportunity to take part in decision making without having to spend time and money travelling to a physical venue. Another provision will potentially benefit creditors and administrations, as administrators will be given the right to bring claims against directors for losses caused by fraudulent or wrongful trading. Businesses which are allowed to continue to trade during insolvency proceedings will benefit from measures to strengthen existing provisions aimed at ensuring that they continue to have access to essential utility supplies, including IT services. Insolvency practitioners will benefit through the removal of requirement for liquidators and trustees to seek sanction from creditors or the department before taking certain actions. The department will benefit through no longer having to go through insolvency practitioners to obtain information about a director's conduct, but instead be given the right to seek it directly from those capable of providing it, including directors themselves. And individuals made bankrupt as a result of petitions by their creditors will benefit through no longer being required to submit a statement of affairs unless the official receiver asks for one. To conclude, therefore, the proposed amendments set out in the proposed bill will bring Northern Ireland's insolvency legislation back into parity with that in England and Wales. All the provisions included are aimed at modernising the insolvency profession and removing any procedure or process which are no longer needed. All the provisions are enforced in England and Wales, and none are considered controversial. So that really concludes my opening remarks, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Just wanted to check then in terms of time frame for the laying of these changes. When do you think they'll come before the committee then for consideration?
Judging by past experience, round about 18 months probably between we have to go to consultation first of all, which will require an 8-week consultation. Now obviously we're coming into the summer period, so we may have missed the boat for that one, so it might be the autumn before we do that. Then we need to consider the any results for the consultation as well, introduce the bill, and they get it through all the stages. So with 12 months to 18 months, with a fair one 12 months, 18 months by previous.
And will the department be seeking accelerated passage for this, or?
I don't think it's included in the accelerated passage. I don't think it was flagged up for that particular area. As I said, there's most of the amendments are specialised and technical in nature, so there's no real sort of earth-shaking thing. But it just because there's a lot of professionals who operate in both jurisdictions, so it's good to have both jurisdictions' rule book in line. Otherwise, there can be problems when, especially those working in England and Wales, have come unstuck whenever they've found out that they presumed that the rules are the same, but they've turned not to be. So there's nothing which would be sort of deal breakers for anything, but so it really hasn't been flagged up for the accelerated passage.
Colleagues, do we have any? David? Yeah.
Just a quick one, small one. Just that you said that's just completely out of interest. What's the difference in the Scotland and then to the south? The other.
In Scotland, the corporate insolvency in Scotland is handled by England and Wales as well. Now, Scotland do have their own personal insolvency is handled differently. They have sequestrations and minimal asset arrangements as well. They're broadly the same as bankruptcy or debt relief orders in the personal space, and they have the equivalent of individual voluntary arrangements as well. So they're broadly the same. And similarly in the Republic of Ireland, in fact my predecessor was involved in assisting in setting up the insolvency service in Ireland, so they are sort of developing their system. It's becoming more and more in line with the England, Wales, Northern Ireland system as well. So they're similar products, but slightly different names and slightly different sort of thresholds for entry to those products.
And Sinead? Can you hear us, Sinead? Yep, that's you.
Muted. Oh, there we go. No, it was actually, I was going to follow on from David's question and ask about the Republic of Ireland. Have we done any scooping exercises in relation to the arrangements there? But Richard has really answered that in the previous reply.
Gentlemen, otherwise the committee are content at this stage, and we look forward to seeing details of the bill and engaging with you both and in the time ahead. So thank you very much for your representations.
Thank you very much.
Are there any items that we need to
Don't think so. I think we're just waiting for the consultation hasn't started yet, and from what they're saying, won't start until possibly after the summer. So we'll just watch out for it.
Okay, and then at this stage we will then move to correspondence, starting with page 312, where a summary index is provided as item 1 in the correspondence section of the meeting packs. If members are content, we can dispose of these correspondence in line with suggestion in the index, other than item 3, which we can come back to in a second. Is there any other items except item 3 that members wish to raise? If not, then we will agree all items with the exception of item 3 are disposed of as recommended. Then just turning to item 3, members, this is a report from York Aviation on air connectivity. The report reviews the performances of Northern Ireland airports in comparison with Dublin and other equivalent regions in respect of air connectivity. The report recommends the development of a Northern Ireland aviation strategy which would sit within DFE. The report also makes reference to uncertainty in respect of the Subsidy Control Act and advocates a multi-agency forum. Obviously, both in Belfast and in the Northwest, airports and air connectivity are of vital importance. So would members be content that we seek a departmental briefing on this report and actions that they are proposed to take? Members content with that? Okay, great. Well, that moves us then to forward work plan, members. At item 9, refer members to the draft work plan at 516. And Peter, you covered some of this, but
yeah, just sorry, members are way ahead of me, and let me just catch up. Oh, come on, there we go. So, members, given our situation, I suggest to members that in terms of the briefing on the 19th of June, that maybe we postpone the briefing from the Oireachtas. It's just because I think so many members have many other commitments. We continue having our meetings, obviously, but on the 19th of June, we'd have the Nevin Economic Research Institute telling us about good jobs, and then we'd have the department telling us about technologies and clusters, and that would be that. And that would be the 2 briefings that day, and then we postpone the SRI to after summer recess, if members are content to do that. And so the idea being that we'd basically have, other than next week, we'd have 2 briefings per week until we get to summer recess, with 1 in the final meeting. So our final meeting would be 26th of June. That would be the Minister, and he could tell us all about his priorities, there's some more stuff about the legislative programme. So if members are content with that approach. The other thing I would suggest, if members are happy, is on the 18th of September, when we come back, and we're going to go to Foyle that day, what we would have is the Northern and Western Regional Assembly, the Northwest Strategic Growth Partnership, of course. We're seeking to get Tourism NI and Tourism Ireland to talk about the tourism offering in the Northwest, but also the McGee Expansion Task Force have indicated they could meet us that day, and we would be in the right part of the country too. So if members are content to that's quite a full programme, as well as our planned visits to the port and to the City of Derry Airport. So if members are happy with that, and then maybe we'd pick up with the universities on the Northwest cross-border work in that regard on another occasion, if members are happy to do that. I think that is quite a full programme and all quite sort of relevant, good stuff. So if members are happy with all of that,
Yep.
Is that agreed? Fab.
Okay, thank you. We then move to any other business, members. Are there any other items members wish to raise at this stage? If not, can I thank those who attended the committee this morning, and I will see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Marvellous, thank you.
Committee Room 30, Sound.